Go over the pond and talk about the United States. Donald Trump has given a strong indication that he might run again to be the next president of the United States.
I always say I ran the first time and I won. Then I ran a second time and I did much better. We got millions and millions more votes. And you know what? That's going to be a story for a long time. What a disgrace it was. But we may just have to do it again. We have to straighten out our country.
Yeah. He also repeated that false claim that the last election was stolen, as you heard there. It was his first speech in the U.S. Capitol since leaving office last year. Trump allies have said the former president could announce a third White House bid as early as this summer, ahead of those crucial November midterm elections. Greg Swenson is the chairman of Republicans Overseas UK. Afternoon to you, Greg. He might do it. Do you think he will? And do you want him to?
Yeah, I think he will, Ian. I think there's little doubt that he's positioning himself for it, and I think the only question is when, and also, you know, will it have an effect on the midterms? I think that's a valid point. So I think he waits, and then it waits till after the midterms, and things could change by then. I think the president will keep an eye on the polls. Do I want him to run? No, I think I'm in that camp of voters, of conservatives who would prefer that it's someone else for a long list of reasons. Well, you know, first of all, his age. Secondly, you know, someone else can serve for 2 terms. I think it will take 2 terms to accomplish some of the things that the movement really likes. And also, I think that, you know, we could all, there is a certain amount of Trump fatigue, that's for sure. But I think the most important issue is, can he win? Yeah. And he will actually consider that. I don't think he will run if he's not confident that he can win.
I'm looking at what is going on you know, in the White House at the moment, Greg, and you know, my thinking is, if you put a chimpanzee in a pair of red dungarees, I think that they could win against Joe Biden. So I'm sensing that Donald Trump could do this. I think we've just lost Greg on that point. Or was my simian analogy so profound that it knocked him sideways? Just maybe contemplating the chimp possibility sitting there in the Oval Office. I don't know if you got the gist of my last question, Greg, but the point was that surely anyone can win against Joe Biden right now.
Without a doubt, it's a really good point. If the election were tomorrow, you know, I think my dog could win in that election. And I think, you know, that's something that the Republicans have to think about, you know, is do we want to run someone just because Biden is so bad and anyone could beat him? Or do we want to really craft a vision for the future and make sure that we're running against the Democratic Party, not just Joe Biden?
Sure, that's a good point. Who are the names out there? They might not be necessarily familiar to British audiences, but are there some characters that you can see in the wings at the moment that could slide into that position and seriously become contenders for the next president?
Yeah, for sure. You'd have to think about Ron DeSantis, who's had a really great run as governor of Florida. He's really crushed it. He crushed it on COVID. He didn't lock down. He didn't bow to the pressure of the fanatical lockdown argument. But also, you know, look at Mike Pompeo, who's spent some time in London recently and has got a decent following. But you'll notice that any of them, whether it's Kristi Noem, a great governor of South Dakota, again, Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley to a certain degree, they're all Trump supporters or supporters of the movement. And I would argue, you know, the sort of an example of the end of the country club Republican. What you can be sure of is the anti-Trumper, never-Trumper faction of the party will not have a credible candidate. That is over. I think people might not like Trump's mean tweets and Trump's sort of unfiltered personality flaws, but they're surely going to support the movement that he was behind or that he was a part of. So
where are those? Where are those other faces, though, Greg? Where are where's the next Ronald Reagan? Where is that person?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think, you know, we've yet to see. I mean, it's really hard to look for another Ronald Reagan. I mean, that's maybe a once in a century phenomenon.
Yeah,
but,
sure.
But I think, you know, look, a lot of the the people that I mentioned, notably Ron DeSantis, for example, they are traditional movement conservatives. Tom Cotton, senator from Arkansas as well. These are movement conservatives that believe in the core conservative principles, many of which Trump governed in some fashion in that way. And that was, that's something that we were all suspicious of in 2017. We were afraid that Trump was a populist, wouldn't necessarily govern like a conservative. I think the party has returned to its core principles and added some of the newer, more important, or at least current issues, like education, like CRT. So I think you'll see a candidate that will please traditional conservatives, as well as the sort of new, America First movement.
Do you think? Yeah, I was going to say I find this fascinating. I think there is a kind of diluted version of this, a very diluted version of this with British politics and Boris Johnson. But I can see that I can kind of see the similarities. And I look at Trump, and years ago, Greg, we would do phone-ins on who should make the best prime minister or the best president, and people would say we want somebody who's not a professional politician. We want somebody who knows business. We want somebody who's outside the box. Somebody who hasn't sat in Capitol Hill restaurants all of their lives, someone who has life experience. You need an Alan Sugar, you need a Donald Trump. These names literally came up, who both happen to be presenters of the same TV show, of course. But nonetheless, people would speak in those terms. And then, of course, it actually happened. Trump does get elected, but there was a sense also that, yes, core conservative values, but, he had that kind of Charlottesville thing that he also encouraged. And for many Republicans, that kind of right-wing politics was a step too far.
Well, I think there's a certain amount of truth to that. It didn't really fit with the country club, polite Republican. But that was part of the problem, that the Republicans were winning philosophical arguments for generations.
Sure.
But they were too polite to actually take the gloves off and play a little dirty. And I think that, what Trump pointed out, and I think this is what happened is, the Charlottesville thing, actually didn't happen. And I think when it was crafted by the media, it was an actual example, or a great example, of the mainstream media, which had become kind of the communications arm of the Democratic Party, crafting these narratives. And finally someone like Trump, but others like him in the party, just said, no, that's not true. We're not just going to let that go by because it was the polite thing to do. George H.W. Bush would have let that slide.
I got it. Listen, Greg, I step in for time, but thank you. We could have continued, certainly on that last point. Greg Swenson, Chairman of Republicans Overseas UK, with us here on talkTV.